So group messaging. So for example, we were talking earlier tonight, you're like, hey, if anybody has a salesperson that's in the room that would help me answer some questions about sales training. So what you can do is go into your channel here that says, here's my, I think that's the right channel. That's GitHub, 2018 Seattle C2. So when you send a note to this group, and if you do an @channel, it will send it to everybody. And it'll say for the first time, are you sure you want to send this to everybody, really? So in this general channel, you can send a note to everybody. And if you have a request of, hey, I'm looking for somebody who could help me with answer a technical question about database structure. Or hey, I'd like to talk to somebody in sales who would help me answer the question about this. This is a way for you to connect with everybody else who's around here without me passing out everybody's email addresses. So if you direct message me, I likely will not respond in a timely manner, just so you know. So if you have a question that you have for me that's relevant to the group, post it and tag @Dave. So mine is @DaveParkerSEA, just like my Twitter ID and everything else. If you post it in the group channel, I will definitely answer you. But typically the questions you're asking are actually questions that are great for everybody. But for me to DM back to everybody else is just, I can't do it. So just have that expectation. If your feelings are hurt now, please get over it. Post it out to the group, that way the group can help. There's also the previous cohort and the Kitsap cohort as well. So if you have questions and you want to extend your reach, you can reach out to those groups too. So I'll make sure that you have access to those things. So that's the Slack channel. All right. So tonight, in the next hour, we'll go through mentor feedback. So I'm going to break you all up and have you share your work with other folks around the table, and basically the people who did the work get to talk to the mentors. I have an encouragement for you that if you get 2 months into the program and you haven't done the work for 2 months in a row, I'm not going to kick you out. I am going to have you question yourself about the validity of your idea. Because if you're not making progress every month on the idea and you've gone 2 months where you haven't hit the deadlines, I'm thinking it's probably not as, like, you can be passionate about it, but passion's not enough. Like, we need passion and data. And the way you get data is you do the deliverables. So I'm not going to kick you out. I'm not going to check your work. But I am going to ask you to think hard and fast about whether you want to pursue that idea. So we'll have about 50% fall off in month 4. Now, will you learn stuff if you keep coming? Sure. It's kind of theory, though. Like, if you're working on an idea, then it's not theory because you're working on your idea. But if you're like learning something theoretical, it's like not super helpful. So you're always welcome to come, but you don't have to come. It's the reason we don't charge all 6 months in advance, because if you kill a bad idea fast, that is success. Because it frees you up for 2 or 3 years to not work on a shitty idea, which is awesome. And money you can earn back, time you cannot earn back. So if I can help you kill a bad idea fast, that's one of the goals. So if I help you raise money fast, that's a goal too. But there'll be more ideas that don't work. So tonight we're going to talk about competitive landscape, customer development, and awkward co-founder discussions, which is about how you split equity. How many of you have not split equity yet, or don't have how many do you have co-founders? I have a co-founder. Awesome. How many of you have incorporated? How many of you have divvied up your equity already? Oh, all right. Timely conversation. For those of you how many don't have co-founders? It's a big group. Awesome. This is stuff you should learn before, because it feels like you're working on the business, but ultimately you need to get the co-founding equity right. So I'm going to give you a mechanic to walk through with that. Okay? All right, for those of you who haven't met, quick bio on me. So 5-time founder, maybe 6. I don't know yet. We'll see. I'm actually doing the same process of customer development and prototyping that you guys are doing, and I'm happy to show you my progress on the new project I'm working on, because we just went live today. I think we're in, well, we don't know if we pushed the live yet. The domain name servers have not changed yet, but the sandbox is live. So it's probably a 6-time founder. Kind of vocational board member, used to run Up Global's programs worldwide. So if you know Startup Weekend, I ran all those programs, Startup Next and Startup Digest and Startup Week. So of the 5 companies, I've sold 3 and closed 2. So raised about 12 million, exited about 80 million. So no unicorns by any means, but not so bad. Not so great either. Just okay. Kind of singles and doubles, mostly singles. Yeah, I mean, as a billionaire, I was on a friend's boat last night that was massive, and I'm like, dang, that's a big boat. So, and the name of the boat was Persistence, and I'm like, yeah, that actually works as a startup founder. So there are kick-ass rewards for some amazing folks. So on the transaction side, I've done 8 transactions. So I've sold to 6 companies, bought 2 companies. So there's a whole kind of thing there. And Seven Peaks Ventures is the venture fund that I represent from a venture perspective. And we do early stage tech seed rounds. I used to say seed and A. And A rounds have gotten so big over the last 2 years that A rounds are silly. Like, so if you didn't, like in the Valley, an A round is a $12 to $15 million round these days. And in Seattle, it's an $8 to $12 million round. So you see seed 1, seed 2, all the way to seed 10. So the last deal we did was a seed 2 deal that we led. So our average check is $750,000. Our target percentage is 10% ownership. So just happy to give you the venture rundown at some point. So this is my way to go meet with all of you in a one-to-many fashion and not be super over-caffeinated. Because if I met with all of you one-on-one over espressos, I would be jacked. And that's not pretty. Just take my word for it. So that's why I do this, and that's why it's important. So last month we covered ideation and research. This month we're going to cover customer development, competitive analysis, and awkward co-founder discussions. As you look out for the next 6 months, for those of you who weren't here last month, that one of the things we did was we scored ourselves on a rubric of 10 categories that venture folks score you on. Sometimes it's in their head. It's kind of the checklist that venture capital folks, and you'll find that rubric in the slides from last month. But I would encourage you to go score yourself. So it's a 1 to 4 scale. I've taken out the human nature. I love you, but your idea kind of sucks, which is a 3. So it's 1, 2, 3, or 4. I hate it, I don't like it, or I love it. But there's no like, Martina, you're awesome, but your idea is weird. Score yourself. There was a lot of 18s and 22s. The big thing that's important about that as you score yourself is it tells you what you need to work on over the next 5 months so that when you get out and talk to investors, you know what they're going to ask and you know where you're weak. So go score yourself and be objective. So getting past that bias is going to be really important. Next month, we'll work on value propositions, product features, and figuring out your expenses to build. So just getting you, like, one of the priority questions there is, if you don't know what you're going to ship, it's hard to get somebody to help build it for you. So you're going to narrow down the features based on the customer development interviews you're going to do this next month. You're going to do about 20 to 25 customer development interviews over the next 30 days. The reason you have 30 days to do it is because you can't do it in a week. And if you're doing business to business, it's going to take you longer to do it because you have to schedule with people. You can't just do random people. Okay? So that's next month, value props, product, features, benefits. Month 4, we cover revenues, monetization. How are you going to make money? So the good news with this one, and I'll give you the preview to it, is there's basically 15 revenue models, and you just need to pick one. Like, you're not inventing a new one. Congratulations, that's awesome news for you, but I'll give you the list of the 15, and you just get to pick one. There's 4 sales models. Again, just pick one. And then you can go out and start to build your financial model based on a set of assumptions. What we're doing is we're unpacking all of these things every month and then giving you the task to go back and do that work. So you'll have a sales strategy, you'll have a business development strategy, you'll have a marketing strategy, and a start of like understanding what those things are. The next month we'll do MVP, product market fit, and actually talk about what we're going to ship as a product. How many of you are doing physical products? Okay. Anybody doing services like consulting? Okay. All right, so there's a parallel for all of these for both virtual products and physical products, and we'll talk about all of them as we get to those as we get to those months. And the last month is really prepping you for go-to-market and pitching. So the math based on the last cohort was we started about 70, we dwindled down to about 35 or 40, and about 15 people pitched. If you come in the last month and just expect a pitch, don't expect that, because you still have to do the work. And if you haven't done the work yet, you basically, every once in a while, somebody will come and, did anybody go to our event, Angels, Pitches, and Beer event last month? Okay. So every once in a while, somebody will show up at that event, and they're just like, I need money, so I'm going to pitch, and I'm totally unprepared. And I'm like, you are going to hurt yourself. Like, you're in front of 12 angel investors who write checks, and you want to have them have an impression of how bad you can't pitch. Like, that's just like self-inflicted. So don't do that. So I'm trying to protect you from yourself. So that's the agenda over the next few months. The deliverables are there every month. So again, if you come expecting to talk to the mentor, just make sure you do the work in advance. Mentors next. We'll go through the training material. We'll do a little bit of workshop in small groups with the people around your table. I'll give you the monthly deliverables, and then I mentioned these are standalone. So super low commitment on your part. If you walk away from month 2 and go, yeah, I'm not ready yet, that's okay. Like, no biggie. So rules of the road. You can't get kicked out for not doing the work. You can get kicked out for these things. Give first. So there's people around that you can add value to around your table, that you know stuff that they don't, and vice versa. I would encourage you to get to know them at the breaks and build your network, because you need to build your network before you actually need to use it. So I would encourage you to work on that. If I hand you a microphone and you ramble, be prepared that I will interrupt you. And I'm totally okay with that. So I know your idea is awesome, but I still won't take everybody else's time. I won't do the work for you. I'm not going to check your work. I'm not going to meet you for coffee to review your 3 ideas between now and next month, just so we're clear. Now, if you have revenue and you have a team and you're looking for funding, I will totally meet with you. But I'm trying to get you ready for that first. Okay? Mentor access is based on your work. Will I provide mentors' email addresses and those things after this? Kind of depends on the mentor. So I don't ask them to do heavy lifting, but if they like your idea, they'll probably go, hey, stay in touch. So do that work and impress them, and if they want to stay in touch, they'll tell you. Okay? All right, so that's kind of rules of the road. So I'm going to give you the process we're going to go through in the next few minutes. Is you're going to provide the folks around your table with, hey, here's the work I did on these deliverables. And then I'm going to have the mentors come and join you at the table. But if I can have them come up first, I'm going to introduce them, and I'll talk with them while you're talking with your table mates. So, and I'm going to hand you guys microphones so you can give us like 30 seconds on you so people can get to know who you are. Come on up. Well, yeah, they can ramble. Well, I'll still interrupt. So, Martina?
We're doing intros now.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm Martina Welkoff, and I am a two-time entrepreneur and now have moved over to the investing side. So I work with 2 funds, one out of San Francisco that's investing in underrepresented founders in emerging tech, and one out of LA called WXR that is investing in women-led AR and VR companies.
Hi, I'm Swati Sir. I am founder and CEO of FlexBright. We build games to manage chronic health conditions, and our data delivers insights to clinicians and players. So I'm in the healthcare space, so if anybody wants any guidance around that area, feel free to give me a shout out. So.
How's it going? My name is Brenton. I'm the CEO of FastBar Technologies. We provide a cashless payment system for events. When someone arrives, they get a wristband, they can tap to pay in less than a second, and we automatically close them out at the end of the night.
I'm Bill Lee, had a startup, was in your position a few years ago, and so stay in touch with the startup community and try to help you isolate your idea, crystallize your idea, and try to find your minimum viable product.
Hello, I'm Nick Hughes. How many here have heard of Founders Live? All right, those of you that didn't raise your hand, I started Founders Live here in Seattle. It's a global platform for entrepreneurs and founders all around the world. We now have events in 15 cities. They're pitch competitions, they're fun. We get 250, 300 people at our events now here. The next one is June 28th at Hard Rock Cafe. So as a founder, check out founderslive.com. A lot of great information on there, but definitely show up to the event if you can. You're going to see 5 really great Seattle startups pitching.
Hi, I'm Javier Soto. I'm a full-time angel investor with some networks here in Seattle, Alliance of Angels, GrabStakes, Swan Venture Fund, doing this angel investing.
Hey everyone, I'm Nick Ellenson. I'm in charge of startup programs at the Washington Tech Industry Association, or WTIA. It's my snazzy sweatshirt shows. And I just help connect startups to resources. Dave's helping out with a ton of things that we're doing, / making sure that I'm not getting too sidetracked. So.
All right, so your mission is to, if the table's full around you, if you're sitting kind of by yourself, partner up with one of the tables, share your work from the last month's deliverables. And for those of you who don't remember, your deliverable was, why are you doing this? Are you doing a product or a service? And what research did you find for market sizing? Share that with your table mates and decide who did good, and they get to go first. And if you didn't do the work, just recognize if there's time at the end, you'll get to talk to the mentors, and then I'm going to talk to the mentors, and we'll divvy them up. So take the next few minutes and share your work. All right, so again, these slides are up on SlideShare for you. You'll have them in Slack channel, and you'll have them in email tomorrow. If you showed up late and didn't get a ticket, Meetup does not give us your email address, so you're not going to get the slides. So you can actually go to next month and just buy a ticket in advance, and that would be a great way to overcome that, and you'll get the slides. So we're talking about competitive landscape. Next, customer development, and then a section on awkward co-founder discussions about how to have the process discussion questions. Bye, Brenton. Good to see you. By the way, his company is Fast Bar. I know that doesn't sound like an Aussie who says, I'm digging him on his way out the door. He's like, he's doing it again. It's like Fast Bar. I'm like, what? Fast Bar. So the American version. They're doing some great stuff, super fun. So he was in a program that I ran about 2.5 years ago. And then a company we just led the investment on about 4 months ago was in the same program that he went through, and we led that investment, like I said, about 3 months ago, which was totally fun. Which for me is great because I get to meet you super early and then watch you pivot away from like, oh yeah, that wasn't such a great idea, but we learned this and we pivoted that direction and we found out it was a killer idea, and it's like, awesome, that's what we're after. All right, so for competitive landscape, the thing that you're gonna do in this process, again, think month 6 and work your way backwards. The questions you're working through in the rubric and what you're gonna have in your deck is, you need a competitive landscape slide. So what you're gonna start building for yourself in this process is you're gonna build yourself a Google sheet that has a list of all of your competitors. And as you start this process, this is just a list that's gonna live on in perpetuity, and at some point when you have a company and it's more than just you, you're gonna assign this to probably the marketing person who's gonna say, we want you to go do a monthly update about what things are changing with our competitors. What's their price? What's their product? Have they made any service changes? You can subscribe to Google Alerts. Google Alerts will send you a note every time that competitor does anything. So when I'm going through and thinking about who are my competitors and what are my notes, what I'm curious about is who's the competitor, what's their URL, what's their TechCrunch link. So if you don't know TechCrunch yet and Crunchbase, what I'm curious about is Crunchbase will show you how much money they've raised and who they've raised money from. Your next column is going to be how much have they raised? Who's on their team? How many people? Do they have a hacker, a hustler, a designer, marketer? Do they have, is the team 50 people, 2 people? What features are they leading with? And then you have a field for your notes. Every month you're going to go in and update this. And then when you have a marketing manager coming onto your company, every month they're going to go through and update it. And again, you can sign up for anybody not used Google Alert yet. So Google Alert, basically you go into your Gmail account, you go type Google Alert, you'll find it, and you can say competitor name and any notification, and anytime there's a press release, anytime there's a notification, you'll get a note that they made a change. And this just becomes a document that lives on. There's nothing worse in your pitch deck than pitching to me and I say, oh, your company's like OfferPad. And you're like, who's OfferPad? And oh, they're in your market and they've raised $15 million. Oh, I didn't know that one. That's like not good. So what you're after is, from a competitive landscape standpoint, you want to know everybody who's a direct competitor, everybody who's a fractional, like are they adjacent competitor, and what features do they have, and you want to look at it from a very feature-oriented perspective. And what I mean by feature-oriented is, what features do you have to ship to be competitive? And likely you're going to have to match feature for feature, or at least figure out what feature you can ship first to at least be in the game. Because if you're not doing what they're doing already, it's going to be really tough. So this is your starting point for your competitor list and notes. Where do you get the data? So one of my favorite things to do is to right mouse click on a page, and I want to look at what their keywords and their metadata is, and it's literally the right mouse click on the page. So if you're not a web developer, you can go in and with a simple right mouse click and go, oh, these are their search words, these are their meta tags, this is their H1 tags. So what keywords are they listing that you want to make sure that you index for? You can pull keywords from your competitors. There's lots of keywords tools. So SEO Power Suite, there's tons of marketing tech tools that you can use. SEMrush is one of my favorites. Topics at SEO Monitor is a great one. You can literally type in, if you think, oh, my company is, we're going to do, I'll use the one I used last month, the Internet Connected Belt. So I can go type in, by the way, don't do that in case you weren't here last month. It's not a good example, it's just an example. You can go to topics like SEO Monitor and type in a category, and it will tell you who has the bulk of the traffic to that topic, how much traffic they have, and what the average spend is on that topic. There is plugins for Google Chrome. One of them, see if I can go to Chrome here real quick. Let's do, you'll notice this tool is a plugin for Chrome that tells me everything like this, how much search volume, how much cost per click, and how much competition do I have for each of those keywords. So there's no reason for you not to know what the top keywords are, what the top traffic is, how competitive should they be, and how much will it cost you to buy 1,000 people to come visit your site. Like, you can do that math.
What's the name of that plugin?
Let's see. I have it up here under K, but I don't. Keyword what? Keyword Planner tool? Okay. There you go. So lots of tools like this that you can use to, so if you have a competitor, you can basically scoop them completely without ever having to go start from scratch. So right mouse click on their site, look at their AdWords. You can use Google AdWords planning tool and type in your competitor. They won't tell you how much they're spending per keyword, but they will tell you what their top keywords are. So Google they won't tell you your price per keyword, but they do want to create competition there, so they'll give you everybody's keywords. So
Keywords everywhere.
Keywords everywhere. Got it, thank you. So I appreciate that. So from a social perspective, you can use a tool called Rival IQ. Rival IQ is a company T.A. McCann started here in town. But don't start, I mean, you're gonna start with a blank Google sheet, but don't start from scratch. Like, go troll your competitors big time and figure out what they've already learned. And that jumps you ahead in the process. One of the challenges with Google AdWords, just so you know, anybody run Google AdWords? Awesome. So for those of you who haven't run Google AdWords spend is always good for Google. It may not be great for you. So you need to get negative keywords like opted out, and you need to make sure that you're not buying words that are super general. So like, don't go drop $1,000 on AdWords in the next month. Let's get through the marketing section first. But I can tell you that in my experience of cranking up an MVP and testing stuff out with landing pages, and we'll talk about that in future sessions, because I'm going to point you to tools to do A/B testing on landing pages. And I'm going to buy traffic, and I'm going to see which headline works, and I'm going to see if I can get people to go all the way through to checkout, and I'm going to give them a 404 error, or hey, thanks for being in our beta, we're not ready yet. I'm going to take them all the way through the commitment of, are they ready to put in their credit card? Because I want to know if this value proposition hunts or not. So I will A/B test the shit out of it. And will I disappoint some people? Sure. Were they going to buy it anyway? No. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to buy traffic, send it to a landing page, A/B test the landing page, find the best one, and then see how much traffic I can buy from Facebook if it's B2C, or how much traffic I can buy from Google if it's B2B, and I'll spend $500 or $1,000 because I'd rather kill this idea in the next 30 days than work on it for 3 more months. Right? So we'll give you the mechanics to how to go through and do that, but start with this. This is the basic version, which is if somebody is facing a Google box with a cursor flashing and you think it's your target customer, what are they typing in to find you? Because if they can't find you, if there's no inbound words you can buy, it means you have to do outbound marketing. If nobody's looking for what you're selling, like how many people think you're doing a new product? A whole product no one's ever seen before. Okay. So if you're doing a product no one doesn't know about and there's no traffic for it, then that dictates how you do marketing. You can't do inbound marketing because nobody's looking for you. So now you have to do outbound marketing. So based on how much traffic you have for that. So this is a place to start. So all these tools are there. They're super cheap or free in most cases. When you go to competition, what you're going to look for is feature lists. When they say, we do this, here's our order, what features and how do they rank those features? What's their product positioning? Does it save you money or does it make you money? Hopefully it makes you money, because making you money will convert at a much faster rate than saving somebody money. Is it clear who the buyer is? Are they targeting the enterprise IT manager? Are they targeting an individual? Who, when you read the tone of the positioning, who are they marketing towards? And take that tone and the knowledge of that as you start to write your copy for your pages, because they've likely spent more time on it than you have. Where do you think their gaps are? By the way, free is not a gap. So this is in a product positioning standpoint. Where are there gaps in their product positioning? Is that a chance for you to build a feature there? Or is it because no one cares and that's why they haven't built a feature there? So you're mapping out basically competitively what features do they have, what are the gaps in their features. Pricing. How have they tiered their pricing? Do they have a free version? Do they have a trial version? Do they have a time-based version? How did they price it based on the number of people or subscribers? Is it a subscription? Is it a transaction fee? So all these things are informing your decisions on how do you think you should position your product. Now, one of the things I'm super geeky about that we'll get to in month 4 is how do you monetize and how do you make money? With revenue models, there's subscription revenue models, there's transaction fee revenue models, there's commerce models, but you're not going to invent a new model. So in 5 years, I've been watching and studying models from a data set of about 2,600 funded companies. There's been 2 new models in 5 years. One was Groupon, and everybody remember what happened with that one? They ended up reverting back to commerce and lead gen, where they're 2, and how many thousands of competitors do they have? Gazillions. The new one is coins and tokens. We'll see how that one plays out. My point is revenue models are not defensible. So what you build in your product is defensible. How you build your feature is defensible. What the user experience is of that feature is defensible. But your revenue model isn't defensible, and you're not going to invent a new one. You're just going to copy an existing one in the market and do that. What do you think of their target customer and the target customer profiles? And then last is, what's their marketing approach? Is there a free white paper? Is there inbound marketing? Are they doing blogs? Is there a click to chat? Do they want to schedule a phone call? So how are they marketing that? Because if they're in front of you, basically you're drawing a parallel that says, if they're doing it this way, how am I going to do it? And how do I do it differently? Or how do I at least have to do it in order to compete? So how many of you have no competitors today? Oh, that makes me so happy. There's only one. So I was wandering around listening into some of the pitches, and it was like, awesome. Some of these are actually much more mature than we had in cohort 1, which is super cool. So when you have competitors, you should just go mine the heck out of them. So direct competitors, indirect competitors, and just go mine the heck out of figuring out what they're going to do. So then what you're going to do is you're going to go back in time. So this is called the Wayback Machine. This is the Internet Archive. So you can now go back to that competitor and see what their site looked like 6 months ago, a year ago, and 6 years ago, and how their marketing message has changed. So the Internet Archive, I would encourage you to support it, by the way. It's a super, super cheap thing. Basically, every site that's ever been cached, my very first company I ever built is still archived on the Wayback Machine. Part of my research in going and looking at the 2,600 funded companies data set is looking at which companies failed. So about 210 of those 2,600 companies failed. And as you go back and look at them systematically, most of them failed because they had no product pricing or no clear revenue model. So 85% of those companies had no product. There was no easy way to buy, and there was no clear value proposition. It was astounding, actually. So probably confirmation bias, or at least I walked away going, this is really interesting. So what was their original feature list? What's their feature list today? What was their product positioning then? What's their product positioning now? So for example, you don't want to go back and do something they already pivoted away from. You want to figure out what they originally did, what they're doing today, and try to think about what they're going to do next. So it gives you good insight into, oh, they went out with this other price point and they changed it. Why is that? Usually it has to do with the fact that your lifetime value to CAC ratio, so CAC is called customer acquisition cost. How much does it cost me to acquire a customer? If their price was forever free and they pivoted away from that, by the way, forever free is not great. It is a little brand limiting. Like you may find out like our customers actually love it and they want to pay me for it, but I've told them it's forever free. So your marketing messaging is not your value proposition. Your value proposition is what does the product do for them and how does it make them money or save them money, okay? So look at how prices change over time. You're going to learn a lot about them based on those things. All right, little sidebar for you on naming and branding. As you go out to do this, one of the things that you want to do is create at least a profile that makes you look bigger than you are. So you want to punch up a little bit. So the way you do that is even if you don't have a name, you pick one. And for my engineer friends in the room, this is where engineers get in, it has to be perfect. No, it doesn't. It just has to be done. So like my beta launched today, I'm in the sandbox mode, and my designer's like, it's just not right yet. I'm like, ship it, right? We'll fix it later. Because the one thing I'm trying to answer is, can I get people to give me this amount of data, take 30 minutes the first time and 10 minutes a month and give me this piece of data? If I can get them to do that, I have a business. If they won't do it, none of my other hypotheses matter. And typically with all startups, you have that one big question you need to answer first. And usually it's the one that's the scariest one that you don't want to talk about because you're like, damn, if this doesn't work, I don't have an idea. That's okay. Attack that one. Do not go to Staples and buy office products, right? Because that's pretending to deal with the business stuff, and what you need to do is go attack the big question. And almost all of you have one big question you need to answer first. So attack that one first. So user experience, is it not as good as it's going to get? You're right, it's not. One of the great lessons in this one is if you ship a product and you're not embarrassed of it, you probably waited too long. So just have in your mind, like, I'm going to ship it early, I'm going to be slightly embarrassed, but at least I will have a prototype to show somebody. And if you wait for it to be perfect, the answer is you wasted a ton of money and probably didn't learn as much as you could have learned. So, yeah.
What is the name of your sandbox, or the name?
It'll be Lumeric is the new company site. So I'll give you guys my quick, so it's like numeric with an L. All the good domains are taken, but it's one word, so that's good. In this case, that's a brand that doesn't mean anything, but it's something that people can find memorable, I hope. So the live version will be up tomorrow. Right now we're in sandbox mode, but I'll push it live tomorrow. So I'll give you my pitch is for founders. The challenge is that there's no base case of data that helps you compare your company to other companies like you. So if you have revenue and I can compare with other software as a service B2B companies, my goal is to build a training set that allows you to go in and put in 6 months worth of top line revenue, number of leads, conversion ratio. Basically, I do the math for you. You put in the raw data and you get back a dashboard report that shows you how you compare to 100 of your peers. That doesn't exist. So, and a lot of people are like, it can't exist. Founders won't give it to you. I'm like, that's a great question. If I can't get founders to give me 30 minutes the first time, it won't exist. But if I can get them to give it to me and I can get 4,000 records by the end of the year, then I'll have more data than Kleiner Perkins has or 500 Startups has, which could be really awesome. So the reason I bring this up is because every company, when you start, you have here's your XY axis, and you have launch here, and you have scale here. As founders, we think about scale because launch is like scary and horrendous. So we're like, well, at scale, I'm gonna have multiple revenue models. I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. It's gonna be amazing, it's gonna kick ass. That's awesome. You still have to survive launch to get to scale. So you have to live in the here and now. And the here and now says, what's that one thing that could break that keeps me from getting to scale? So if I have 40,000 records, it's awesome. 40,000 is not my problem. The first 100 are my problem. So I have to answer the first 100 question first. So your question is, at launch, what's that critical question you need to answer before you put a second mortgage on your house, cash out your 401k, and leave your day job? Like, that's just like words to the wise. Because I know a bunch of people who've done it. And I'm like, don't leave your day job yet. Go talk to 25 customers first. All right, here's some tools. Lean domain search is you can put in some context around what you're trying to do, and it will give you some domain name options that you can convert to different sites, because sometimes there's a .vc extension and sometimes there's a .whatever extension. So that's one of the tools. Wordoid gives you a chance to put in combination of words, and it will give you a name. Some of them are really bad. Not bad like evil bad, but just like, no, it's bad marketing. Perfect is the enemy of good here. So pick a working name, test it out. You can easily, Squad Help is a crowd-sourced version where you can tell somebody, you can give them the pitch that you've tested out now, and you can go to Squad Help and they will basically do a contest and come up with a name and a domain for you. So just in case you're not a marketer, that's one of the options. The other thing you can do is get a logo at 99 Designs, or you can go to Fiverr.com, Fiverr. Fiverr is one of my favorite things to post on because there's a bunch of, do you guys have tasky stuff you need to do during the day? You're like, somebody else should do this for me. I literally once a week with Fiverr, I do something like that, where I'm like, I need somebody to scrape this list and create an Excel spreadsheet for me. I post it on Fiverr, and within like an hour, I have 5 people who will do it for $15. And I'm like, you do it. And so Fiverr is just this super tasky-oriented site. So I've cranked up a logo in less than 24 hours. Every time I do a recorded phone interview for a white paper and a blog post, I send it over for somebody to transcribe it. It usually costs me $15. So one of the ways that I've created a lot of content is I have people who are experts on particular, and where I'm not an expert, and I want to interview you. So I send you 4 questions in advance, and I send a note and say, hey, can I do this interview with you? What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the record button on Uber Conference. Almost all of them have a record button. Pick your favorite choice. I'm going to record the 30-minute conversation. I'm going to take that recording and email that MP3 or Dropbox it off to somebody in Fiverr. And by tomorrow, I'm going to have a transcript of our conversation. I'm going to clean it up a little bit. It's going to be more than 700 or 800 words, so Google will like that. The headline of the story of the first question is going to be the thing that I think is the most typed in thing that I'm trying to test. The first paragraph is going to have some summary conversation between Ruth and I about the topic. So I'm then going to post it on my blog, and Google's going to index it. So now I have my most likely keyword search is the headline. The summary of the discussion that Ruth and I are going to have is my first paragraph. It's more than 800 characters long. Google likes that. And now I've posted it. So I have posts on my blog from years ago that rank in the first page of Google that was literally Ben Strong, who was here from Perkins earlier, like, how do you value a startup? Pretty generic question. It ranks number 3 on SEO search for Google. Organic. So it drives probably, to that blog post, there's probably 3,000 reads a year to that blog post. And it was Ben who had all the knowledge about it. I just asked him the questions, right? So I got a total halo effect of content for asking the questions. So when you don't have time to go write lots of posts, that's a hack. So just do that together, and it's super easy to do, and it's cheap. And literally, you can have it tomorrow. So just a way to make some of those things work. So naming and branding, pick a name. You can do Fiverr, you can do a logo for 25 bucks. Like, make something that, you're gonna throw it away. So just have that in your head. because you're going to. So I've done MVPs for stuff where I spent $1,000 or $4,000, and it's like I know it's not going to make it into scale, into production, but I want to show somebody something real, right? So they look at it and go, oh, this is a real thing, not just a hobby you're working on. Yeah.
So a site like NameChecker is also helpful because if you're going to do something that's going to be have to hit Facebook, making sure that the name is available on all social platforms.
Yep, NameChecker was the reference there. So it gives you a sense if that name's available on all social platforms. Yeah.
Another key is don't start searching these things until you're actually ready to buy, because there are people who will skim for domain searches and will buy the domain that you considered, and then you have to buy it from them and it won't be the same price.
That's very true. So make sure you're ready to buy when you do it, but don't, and then the flip side of that is make sure you're not too ready to buy, because I own about 120 domain names. So in case you find one you don't like, I have some extras. A couple of that I've spent a lot of money on, actually. And I'm reluctant to sell them because I get people all the time going, hey, do you want to sell it? And I'm like, yeah, it's $18,000. They're like, that's too high. I'm like, I don't care. It's going to cost me $9 to renew it. You want to know if the social is available, if it's B2C. It may not matter if it's B2B, right? So just, it gives you a way, think about it in the standpoint of when you do this, your first version of this is a PowerPoint, right? You're going to be like, Dave, I want to show you my demo. Arrow, arrow, right? It's like next button, next button. But you want to have something that looks like it has some design function to it. Ultimately, you're going to throw this part of it away. But just know you just need to have some design that you're pulling together on it. Okay, little quick note on branding and naming. All right, let's talk about customer development. So customer development it's a combination of design thinking, if you've been to this part of our world in startups before, lean startup and agile development. And a little background, so Steve Blank used to be on my board, super great guy, definitely wrote the definitive guide on all things customer development. Eric Ries popularized it. But the thing that you need to know about all these things is they all kind of converge in this concept of customer development. So design thinking is a whole category. Stanford runs a class on it. It's absolutely amazing. If you're interested in this space, spend some time on design thinking. It's really talking about how the process of doing design thinking. Lean Startup, the book summary for Lean Startup is there. You can find it on SlideShare. And basically Lean Startup is great when you have 1,000 unique visitors a month at your site. If you're at this stage and you don't have 1,000 uniques, it's probably more mature than you need to be, which is fine, but you know where you're going. But just know that that's Lean Startup is, it's almost a religious position with some people, and Eric's amazing. But just know it's a little bit different. Agile development. So just the priority of this, if your developers are like, we're using Agile, great, awesome. Again, something you should know about, but not something you need to care about too much at this point. Don't auger in too much on this. So customer development that you do need to care about is, if you think about customer development for you never ends. So I was meeting with one of our portfolio companies today, the guys I was referencing that was in my session like this 2.5 years ago. And I was saying, oh, we're doing customer development. And he's like, we never stop. So on the CEO is talking with customers from a sales standpoint, and he's asking questions about features and what do you like and where does this, like, he's always asking customer development questions. Then the CTO is the head of product, and he's talking with people about what feature do you want us to ship next. So the mechanics I'm going to give you for customer development tonight are you're never going to stop. Like at some point you'll be like cursing Dave because, damn it, customer development never ends. And the answer is it never ends. Because you're trying to figure out and anticipate what the customer wants next. And a lot of that comes from looking eye to eye with Javier. I want to see how he reacts, where he's like, eh. I'm like, ooh, what, is that not important? Or was that important? Well, I was just thinking that if we did it this way, it'd actually be more interesting. You're like, that's gold. Because what you're sitting and talking with people about is this really a problem or not? Is it a pain pill or is it a vitamin? And if the answer is to any of your questions you're asking, if the answer is meh, it's not a pain pill, and people won't pay for it. And so you're like, oh my God, if you built that, I would buy it today. That's a good sign. So on the continuum, it has to be, oh my God, if you had that today, I would buy it. So customer development is basically the process of going from customer discovery, customer validation, and then you're going to go into the execution mode, which is customer creation and ultimately company building. I found a great design on this that I wanted to share with you. It was actually done by a friend. I was looking at this online, and I'm like, oh, Dave Landis did that. That's kind of crazy. Dave was my VP of marketing at a company. If you think about the process, you have the concept process and your direction. Down here where you're starting today, you're probably in the direction. I think this is the problem I'm trying to solve. And as you go up here, you're talking about what are my insights, what's my hypothesis, I'm gonna go talk with people, and every time I talk with a customer, it's gonna inform my next step of the process. I'm gonna ask a question and find out that question 3 was more important than question 1, and I'm gonna move question 3 up next time. So I'm gonna say, oh, I learned this so I'm gonna lead with the thing I think I want people to say, and if they're like, nah, it's not really important. So in the way I always think about doing it is I'm gonna give people choices. If I had 3 features I could ship, feature 1, feature 2, or feature 3, how would you rank them? What would be most important to you? And you're gonna learn a lot. People are gonna be like, I don't care about that one at all, but this feature would be awesome. So you're not trying to lead them, you're trying to help them understand what problem it is you're trying to solve. So you're gonna go through this revise hypothesis phase a bunch. And then when you come here, you're gonna go through the resolve process, which is I'm gonna continue to build and measure and learn. But before I build, measure, and learn, I wanna go do 25 customer interviews before I spend any money on development. And I'm probably gonna design my product as a PowerPoint and show it to a bunch of people before I ever spend any money on dev. And for the developers, they're like, I can just go and code and it would be awesome and I don't really need to talk to customers. Don't do it. Because you will ship a feature that nobody gives a shit about. And you just have to remember. So just want to give you context. Henry Ford's thing was they can get any color they want as long as it's black, right? You're not Henry Ford. This is my grandfather's garage. So this is my grandfather in 1911, standing behind that Eagle motorcycle. You'll notice here he is the proprietor of the gas station because there was no gas station. And in 1911, they didn't do, the assembly line hadn't been invented until 1914. So they actually shipped the pieces and they reassembled them. So, and today we have this thing called the interweb, and people can check your competition and know your product's pricing, and they know what the product's features are. So yeah, in my grandfather's time, you could have any color you wanted as long as it was black, but today you get lots of choices. And don't be arrogant about it, like go talk to customers. So, and the way you do that is to get out in front of them. So here's your customer development goals. You want to have, a lot of times founders will focus on their product. Oh, my product, isn't it awesome? It's amazing, this is really cool. Don't you love my product, Javier? It's really awesome. You need to have an acute focus on the problem, because the odds are your product's going to be wrong. But if you have an acute focus on the problem and the customer, then you'll pivot around until you find out what thing they really are after. So keep an acute focus on the problem I'm solving, the problem I'm solving, the problem I'm solving. And if it happens to be the product you're shipping, yay for you, it's probably going to be slight variations of it. How do you find out if the customer cares? Like you want to know before you leave, like, so I'll give you the scariest questions as a first-time founder you can ask. Ruth, if this idea was to fail, why would it fail? And most founders are like, I don't want to ask that question. I might find out why I was going to fail. I'm like, so as I've been shopping this Lumeric idea around, I'm like, so I'm looking for a reason to kill this idea. Tell me why I should kill it. People are like, that's a little aggressive. And I'm like, yeah, I don't want to waste any time on it if it's a bad idea. And so it's going to save you months or years. So if there's a fatal flaw in your idea, when do you want to know? 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years. So find out early, as fast as you can, if there's a fatal flaw. If there's a competitor and you're like, oh, hand wave, they're really not that good, maybe. You just need to go do the research. When you ask your customer development interviews about competitors, what do you love about them? What do you hate about them? You're not asking middle of the road questions. You're asking polarizing questions. So you use their service. Do you love it? It's okay. What makes it okay instead of awesome? Well, they used to have this feature, but they don't have it anymore. I really wish they would do this. That's great. Like you're now finding that gap analysis of competitive advantage. Okay? Determine the difference in your product at launch versus your product at scale. We talked a little bit about that. You can be all kinds of things when you're mature and you've raised lots of money and you have lots of customers. You have lots of choices. But you need to make sure you nail the initial choices because you're not going to get to scale otherwise. And it'll help you give your feature priorities and your product roadmap. So you're going to ship your MVP. So we're going to talk about that in the next couple weeks. What are the features you need to ship? And then you're going to have this vision of where you want to go. But when you go out and talk with customers, you're going to say, so we have some choices in our next features we can ship, because you're going to have, like everybody else, as a friend of mine said, at startups, when you're doing a startup, you're under everything. You're understaffed, you're undercapitalized, you don't have enough time. So that's your starting position. So you have scarcity to deal with. So now you have 12 features you could ship, and as the founder, you love them all, because that's the way we are, right? And I see what it's going to look like when it's at scale. But I only have so much dev resources available, or I only have so much cash available. So how are you going to prioritize them? So the process for me is to go through this customer development process and go ask the customers the questions. Okay? All right. Your mechanics, you're going to create a Google form. You are not going to use the form remotely, and you're not going to use Amazon Mechanical Turk to do a survey, because all that is a waste of your frickin' time, because I need to look somebody in the eye and I want to read their body language. Like, are they getting what I'm talking about or not? Do they feel this pain or not? If they're not the buyer, who is? Is it their boss? Is it their subordinate? Like, I want to look them in the eye. You're going to ask them structured questions that start from general to specific. And the reason you're going to use a Google form is you want to capture that data. So you can go back and say, this was a cool feature, but we're not going to do it yet. But at least I know I've captured it. So you can capture it on your phone, you can capture it on a tablet, you can capture it on your laptop. Don't care, but you need to do it in a structured way. Because when you do 25 customer interviews, you're going to forget what somebody said. And you're like, Brett said this really interesting thing. I can't remember what it is. And I didn't write it down. Like, don't do that. Like, this is your data that informs your decisions. What do you want to know? What will they pay for in first? How much would they pay for it? So if I could ship this feature and it was worthwhile, what would you pay for it? What are you doing today as an alternate? Oh, we have people working on that today. Well, how much time? Oh, it's one person. How much of their percentage of time do they spend on it? Oh, they spend about 20%. Is that person under $50,000 or over $50,000? I'm triangulating on, is this a big pain? Is it lots of, is it a problem? How do I know? And then the last question is, if it's to fail, why will it fail? Your questions also need to be neutral, not guided. And by guided, I mean, Javier, don't you love my product? Isn't my baby beautiful? And the answer is no, it's not yet. But there's hope for it to be at some point. All right, you're going to build a list of your interested parties. So I'm going to take Javier's email. I'm going to finish the interview with Javier, and I'm going to say, Javier, as I have updates, can I send you my product updates as I go? Most of the time, people will say yes. I'm not going to spam them. I'm going to send them a monthly update. My monthly update is going to be set up in MailChimp. You can do it for free. You're going to ask for permission. You're going to do it every month to start. When you're shipping something, do it every 2 weeks. But what I'm going to ask is, here's what we did in the last month. Here's what we're going to do next, and here's how I could use your help. Now, most people aren't going to respond. But think about it this way. If you had a product today and you had a list of 500 people who had expressed interest, what would that list be worth? So what you're doing this week with all those interviews is you're building your list and building your list and building your list. And you're going to end up with a list in the next 4 months of about 100 people. And you're going to ask them all if they'll opt in to your monthly update. Most of them will say yes. If you don't make progress and you don't send them an update, that sends them a sign that you're not serious about this product or idea. If you do make progress and you did learn something and you are learning something, they're going to be like, oh, that's really interesting. But a year from now, that list will be about 800 or 1,000 people. So now when you say, hey, we're thinking about shipping this product or this feature or that feature, could you rank it for us? And you have 800 people on your email list, the answer is, that's awesome. I wish I had that list today. And that's what you're starting off with. You're just starting your list and you're just building your list. So total shout out, by the way, for T.A. McCann on this one. I've got a blog post about this because I've seen T.A. actually work the room where he's like, are you my target customer profile? Awesome, nice to meet you. Oh, you're not? Okay, hey, are you my target customer profile? I'm like, dude, you are such an engineer. He's a mechanical engineer and he's like I'm like, he's working the room on, are you my target customer or not? And he's like, well, I wasn't gonna meet them anyway, so it's no big deal. So you just have to, you got to love your mechanical engineers. All right, here's a couple of quick notes on what not to do. You are not the customer. Please remember that. You may have the profile of your customer, but your bias will influence what you ship, and you just need to be aware that you're not the customer. Do not, in any case, tolerate a small sample set. You need data. You need more people. You need to avoid your selection bias. So I only targeted people who love me. It's like giving a reference. Well, my mom was a reference, and my uncle was a reference, and I only talked to people who loved me. And it's like, no, I want to talk to people who are I want to find the most skeptical person about this idea, and every month I want to see if they become more skeptical or less skeptical. Because if that informs my decision. No rhetorical questions, no blind surveys we talked about, and you cannot outsource this to somebody on your team or a random person on Fiverr. Like, you need to do this work. When you have a product manager at some point and you have 10 or 15 people on your team, that'll be good. So how many customer interviews? If you're doing business to business, how many of you are business to business? How many business to consumer? How many of you don't know yet? Okay. So if you're doing B2B, you need to do about 25 customer profile interviews in the next month. If you're doing business to consumer, lucky you, you can go to Bellevue Square and knock down some interviews on a Saturday. This is the biggest problem with the startup weekend, because when we do it on a weekend and people are doing B2B, it's like, it's tough to do 25 customer interviews on a Saturday. So use LinkedIn, write a profile. You can, there's a bunch of free tools you can do to do this, from HubSpot to others, where you can do what's called a snippet, where it inserts somebody's specific name, and you're typing a code and it just generates the snippet for you. I use Text Expander and HubSpot to do it for me. There's a free version you can install with Gmail as a plugin, and you can literally start to build your list, and you can see the last time somebody read it, you can see the last time somebody opened it. Super cheap. I mean, well, it's beyond super cheap, it's just free. And for what you're doing right now, you can feed all of those names then into MailChimp, and you have a list. So that's what you're doing, is building that list. So you need to do 25 customer interviews, B2B, 50 interviews, B2C. In B2C, you have to think about what demographic you're after. So on a B2C, so the B2C folks, the nice thing is you can start to build a demographic profile of who your customer and your user profile is, same as you can on B2B, but B2B happens to be more title, role, seniority, what their business buyer is. And you're going to come away, as you come into next month, with a hypothesis. Now, you're going to be wrong, but you have to pick something. Because what you're going to do, and one of the things I see happen a lot with startups, is like, well, we think everybody could use our product. And it's like, bad. Like, that's like bad sign, right? It means you don't know. And I'd rather see you say, we're augured in on this customer profile until you prove me wrong. Like, go do 15 interviews with that customer profile, and if you find out that is not my customer profile, awesome, pivot, change your profile. But if you interview everybody and you don't learn anything, it's because everybody was your target. So don't do that. Pick a customer, pick a hypothesis, test it as if with conviction, like, we're shipping a product with these features, and this is what we're going to do, and here's how we're going to price it. And talk about it aspirationally, because they don't know. And it's not that you're lying to them, you're just trying to get them to inform your decision. Okay? So, and my last one is meh equals bad. So if somebody's like, hey, what do you think about this idea? And they're like, meh. Like, that's bad. You can't talk them into that's good. That's just like categorically bad. So be aware of this equals, yikes, this isn't a good idea. So you can keep doing interviews for that, but just be aware that's usually an indication. All right, a little fundraising note for you. Same topic and slides I use at Techstars every cohort. You have opinions. Investors, we have opinions, except I have a checkbook. So if it's your opinion against my opinion, I win because I have a checkbook. Now, if you have data, I will change my opinion. So I was at an event last week, and Enrique Gaudreau was there, and he was like talking about one of the companies that, have you ever passed on a company and then came back later and invested in the company? The answer was, oh yeah, absolutely. But they had data. So if if you and I are having a conversation about your target segment, so keep in mind, human nature is this way. None of us want to look dumb. So if you're like, I have an opinion, you have an opinion, and you're like, I'm doing this really cool thing, and I'm like, I don't know if I like that market. And you're like, well, we've talked to 87 people, and 75 of them said if we could ship this feature, they'd buy it. I'm like, oh, that's really curious. Tell me more. Right? Because up until that, I'm like, you got an opinion, I got an opinion. But if you have data, I'm willing to learn. So I could be wrong in my opinion. So your goal is to get to the data, and that's why you need to be able to look at it in your Google form and say, we've talked to 87 people, and here's what they said. All right, repeat after me. Hi. Hi. My name is Dave. Fill your name in here. You can do it. I believe in you. I'm an entrepreneur. Half my ideas are great. Half my ideas are crap. Let's test this one out. All right, so 2 roles this serves. When you have a team and you're not the only, so we've done this shift in entrepreneurship. In the last 10 years, we had the Steve Jobs era for a number of years where there's like the one brilliant person who makes all the decisions. And now you guys are way smarter than I am. So I want to enable my team to question my ideas. And I want to enable me to say sometimes the path I'm on, like I own domains for stuff that I can't even remember what I bought the domain name for. Like I read the domain name now and think, yeah, I don't know what I was thinking. But it sounded good at the time because I bought the domain name because I have 120 of them. So, but I read back some of them and I'm like, I have no idea what I was thinking about, right? And I'm like, and it's a really bad name. You just need to you need to start with a null hypothesis. And the null hypothesis is this idea is wrong until I prove it right, instead of the opposite, which is this idea is right until I prove it wrong. So take that as a starting point. And you need hypothesis versus fact. So if you're augured in on, I know, Dave, it doesn't matter, just know that when I walk away from you, it's not that I'm trying to offend you, but if you have nothing to learn, then I don't really need to talk to you. So be aware of that. And frankly, the other investors just like mentally check out. They'll nod and smile, and you'll walk away going, oh, that was a great meeting. And I'm like, no, it wasn't. Because they asked you questions, but you didn't answer them because you didn't listen. So you should always be testing what you're thinking about. And you need to give people permission to give you negative feedback. And if you don't, then your team will decide that, wow, we just can't tell Dave that the emperor has no clothes. And that's a bad sign for you. And as an investor, it's horrible. What questions do you want to answer? One of your deliverables will be, what are your top 5? I'm not going to have you do it right now. I'm going to have you do it as you come away from it. But there's usually, like I said, in my case, as I think about Lumeric, there's one big question I want to answer, which is, can I make this painless enough and seamless enough that you would spend 30 minutes gathering up the data from different places? Because in most folks, they have to go to their accountant, or they have to go to QuickBooks, or there's pieces of data strung out all over the place that if I can't get you to do the first version, I can't get you to do the monthly version. And it's probably going to take you 30 minutes to do it. So can I get the UX super smooth? Can I answer your questions and tell you how you need to do it in advance? Can I send you an email prompt every week if you start the process but you bail out? Like, can I educate you? So all of those questions come down to, can I get you to do that one 30-minute thing? And in a previous, I was talking with a friend who ran a company in the medical space, and they had trouble onboarding their doctors. He's like, we tried to sell to the doctors, and we realized it wasn't the doctors. We tried to sell to the administrators for the doctors, and that was super hard. And ultimately, they killed the idea because they couldn't get that first 30 minutes worth of data. And I'm like, I could totally be wrong. So if you start with a null hypothesis, then it's like, well, I don't have to think about what feature I'm going to ship next week or next month, because the only question I need to answer is this one question. And if this works, yeah, it's interesting. But if it doesn't work, I don't want to spend any more time on it. So permission to give you negative answers, know what questions you want to answer. All right, awkward co-founder discussions, and then we'll be done. So here's the deal. Most of you don't have co-founders yet. Congratulations, because you have a chance to do this right. I did 50-50 once. 50-50 is the only wrong option. And the reason is because as an investor, and you're like, yeah, we're co-founders, and we're 50-50. And as an investor, I can tell you now, I look at that and say, oh, so the first conflict you had, you elected to kick the can. Okay, I wonder when it really gets hard what's going to happen. So 50-50 is the only option that's bad. And if you're 50-50, your task is going to go to be unravel that and decide who's going to make the decision. Because ultimately, somebody has to make a decision about something. And you're like, Dave, you don't understand. We're spouses or blah, blah, blah. I'm like, whatever. You're just not going to get funded. So you're going to set up a process to, and these are all links that will come back to you in the email. But basically, there's a process, and this is a blog post that talks about pre-incorporation. They're going to do 2 meetings if you haven't incorporated yet. Meeting number 1 is, I know, so Bill and I have been friends quite a while, and I know that coming into this conversation, Bill's my technical co-founder, I'm the business co-founder, it's my idea. Bill has expectations whether I've asked them about them or not. Everybody does. And just sticking your head in the sand doesn't actually make it go away. So what you're going to have to do is have a conversation about, so why do you want to do this? And I'm going to give you a set of questions through the blog post. But the questions are things like, okay, so if we have to put money into the company and we're 60-40, we're going to put money in 60-40, right? Because I've done the 50-50 one that I was telling you was the bad example. He needed to take money out of the company, but for him to take money out of the company, guess who had to put money into the company? Well, if I have to put money into the company, doesn't that impact our equity? Well, yeah, but you have money and I don't, and you need me from a technical co-founder perspective. I'm like, whoa, right? And we've already incorporated. Dang. Like that would have been a good expectation to know in advance, right? Another friend of mine went through the same process where one of the 3 co-founders had alimony he had to pay. He's like, I can't do it unless I get paid. So 2 of them are putting in money every month so somebody else can take money out for something that's in his past, and they're getting bitter about it like every month. Right? So this conversation you need to have in advance before you incorporate, because incorporation feels like this big check mark of like, I did this big business thing. Nope, not if you do it wrong, because it's super expensive. And unraveling this later is the number 2 reason startups fall apart. The first one is lack of product market fit. And the second one is co-founder issues. And as an investor, we just don't want to touch co-founder issues. It's just a mess. Right? We're going to bounce pass it back to you and say, when you have this fixed, come back and talk to us. Because I can't step in and do it. It's just too much work. So you're going to go to Founders, F-O-U-N-D-R-S. So Mark Suster's company did this. And basically, this is an equity share calculator. You'll notice it has 4 founders and not 5. You can go up to 4, but you can't do more than 4. If you think about big companies, who was the everybody knows Steve and Woz, and who was the 3rd person at Apple? There was one, right? Yeah, he sold out really early. So I'm just saying that more than 4, if you're like, we have 6, bad sign. So, and this gives you the option of who's going to be the CEO, which founder is going to code or set up the site, who had the original idea, and you're going to say, checkbox, checkbox. There are some boxes here that you can have multiple people checkbox. And then down at the bottom of this, you're going to hit the calculate button, and you're going to print it out. And you're going to bring it to our beer. And we're going to sit down and play our cards at the same time. And we're going to say, oh, I thought you were going to do this. I thought I was going to do that. Okay, well, so which one of us is going to do it? Oh, we're both going to do it. Okay.
Where's this again?
Founders, F-O-U-N-D-R-S. It'll be on your email tonight too, but founders.com. And there's no E in the last, Foundrs.com. And you literally can go through this and calculate it out. My favorite version of this is, I've done this a number of times with coaching founders through it. And one of them was, well, I just didn't print it out. I'm like, that's bullshit. Like, so you didn't like what it said, so you decided not to print it out. Okay, so we know how this is going to go, right? So it's a good indicator of like what's going to happen. So you're going to go through, you're going to click on the little boxes, you're going to hit calculate, you're going to hit print, you're going to bring it to your co-founder, and you're going to have a discussion of, here's my cards, what's yours, let's have a beer and talk about it. Adult beverage of choice, or not adult beverage of choice, depending on where you're at. So that's meeting number 1. Clear the air. So if we have to put $20,000 in next week, are you in a pro rata or not? Well, no, I can't do that. Okay. So how does that impact cash in impacts. Your basis and sweat equity impacts. We're going to get to sweat equity in a second. This is just how we're starting together and making sure everybody has clear expectations, because again, everybody has them. If they're unstated, they're just not clear. So you're going to go through that mechanic first. Okay? Part 2, meeting 2, or meeting 1, you're going to print it out, bring the copy, and then in incorporation, one of the things you're going to do at incorporation, you're going to introduce this concept of reverse vesting schedules. And here's why. And founders, so the first time it's my 3rd startup, I was doing a deal, and they're like, so you have the stock, we want you to do reverse vesting. I'm like, I already own the stock. They're like, we're not going to invest if you don't do reverse vesting. And I'm like, well, I'm the founder, I'm committed to the company. And they're like, yeah, but if you left, we would have to hire somebody to replace you. And in order to hire somebody to replace you, we have to have equity to do that. And I'm like, oh, that actually makes sense. But I just never heard it before. But I was slightly offended that they asked, because I'm like, this is my 3rd startup. I've already been in this movie before. And reverse vesting schedule protects you from this. When your co-founder gets a job back at Google, and they have to leave and they own 38% of the company, or whatever percentage you guys settled in on, and now they own 38% and they've left. And you need to repurpose that 38% or whatever the non-vested shares are to hire somebody to replace them. And you're like, well, we didn't do reverse vesting schedules. Well, guess what? On your next startup, you will. Because we call that non-participating equity, which is I look at your cap table and I'm like, hey, who's this person? Oh, that was one of our co-founders. So I'm going to buy 10% of your company for $750,000, and that person owns 18% of your company. How much money did they put in? Oh, so their stock now is worth 1.5. They're non-participating. They're no longer here, and they left you in the lurch. Yet, not going to write that check. So, and again, this is stuff that you won't hear about, because people will be like, that cap table's a mess, and I just won't write a check. But they'll be like, oh, okay, well, if you can you get them off the cap table? Well, now they think there's going to be funding, and now they're greedy, and they'd like to get paid, and it's like, whoa. Again, I'm stepping into a whole mess that you need to fix, right, before I can help you out on as an investor. So, option pool then is going to be 20% for future hires. And we talked about 50-50 already. All right, so yeah.
What is it? How far off are you mean? Sorry, I must have missed.
So when you print out the sheet and I say I'm at 68% and you say you're at 68%, the question is, okay, now we're at 134% or whatever it is. So like, okay, we're off by 34%. Who's doing what? So you just need to calculate, especially if you have more than 2 of you or 3 or 4 of you. You're going to find out everybody's expectations, and that's a good thing. But you should plan that conversation being a 1 or 2 beer where people leave and come back and talk about it later. Like, you're not going to resolve it that night, but you're going to have the conversation. So just, for those of you who are drivers, you're like, we need to resolve this. It's like, no. Everybody has expectations. Just get them out on the table. That's as good as you're going to get for meeting number 1. Okay? All right, so post-incorporation, you're going to use a tool called Slicing Pie. Slicing Pie basically allows you to look at your milestones and deliverables over the next 6, 12, 18 months. And then you're going to start to track, and this tool actually is a super inexpensive tool that you can actually track people's contribution in hours and their market rate equivalent. So what happens with this is, I'm super excited about our idea, Sid, I want to work really, and you're like, yeah, but Dave, then you got a promotion and you got more money, and you're like, yeah, but I have 40% of the company, I was a co-founder, and I put in some, $400 when we started. Yeah, but you're not doing shit, right? So this actually tracks who does what on a monthly basis, so that you can have this ongoing conversation, again, based on data, not on how I feel, about your contribution and whether we're living up to expectations, and do we really need to think about this? And since we have reverse vesting, we can make changes if we need to, versus like all that stock being done up front. So just the side note on this is, when there's HR changes to be made, make them quickly. Do not wait. So non-participating equity is a bad thing, and it never goes away. And just because they left but they took their equity with them doesn't mean that it's possible to recover. So fix that one quickly. All right. Let's see. All right, so a couple have you actually do this one here tonight. We'll take a few minutes before we break. So I'm going to have you write up some of your questions and concerns from a co-founder perspective. If you don't have a co-founder yet, think about who you need to hire or bring in as a co-founder. So the exercise here is just write up what are your concerns and your expectations? What do you need somebody to bring to the table if you don't have one yet? So who's that co-founder? What's their profile? What do you need them? Do they need to bring cash to the table? Do they need to be able to work for free for 6 months? Do they need to build the product from scratch? Like if you're not technical and you need a technical person, so this, it's starting to set up the expectation, at least you can go through and do that calculator by yourself and say, this person, founder 2, needs to do these things. How much equity am I going to give away? And keep in mind, there's not enough hours in the day for you to do this solo. So what do you need? What are your concerns? And what do you need to make sure you capture in that first conversation? So if you have a co-founder, you have context because you have a face to put it to. If you don't have a co-founder, do this in the hypothetical so you know what you're looking for. We'll just take about 5 minutes to jot down some of your notes.